All right, Fiends and Swan, this is the one you've been waiting for. We're going to learn about the history and the making of the Lady Death Majestic Statue Series. So we got this Kickstarter going on right now. If you didn't hear about it, if you're just learning about it right now, go check it out. We got the links in the description. Go right there right now. Pre-order your own statue right now because you don't want to miss this. We got, 8 days left. So right now, like the description says, we got Joe Allard. And he is the... now my mind's going blank. He is... Let's bring him on. Let's find out what he does.
Art director.
Art director. Thank you. Two simple words. Art director. Yeah. I'm thinking about the Kickstarter too much. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
First of all, I want to say, love your shirt. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Big fan.
Oh, nice. I love it. Yeah. Brothers.
So, art director. Sorry, I forgot that.
No worries.
So, all right. Speaking of,
we are often forgot. No, I'm just kidding.
So, what do you do? What do you do as an art director? What does that mean?
Well, specific to this project, I mean, I'm two things: art director regularly and designer also. So I do both jobs for the toy and collectible industry. Art director in particular, like with this project, there'll be a design. Sometimes it'll be my design. Sometimes it'll be somebody else's design, as in this case. And I'm brought along just to kind of shepherd the project from kind of concept to creation. Where did it start and bringing it through to production. In a nutshell, basically to retain the kind of creative integrity that the designer, whoever that is, intended, and whatever the client wants, basically with the product. So it's kind of just keeping tabs on everything. First the design, like I said, then through sculpture, and then mold, cast, pre-production, prototype, and then to manufacturing. And you just kind of are the creative lead for all of that stuff for each of the projects. That's an art director in a nutshell. So you actually sound like a very important person because don't believe it.
Because that's a lot to keep track of, and it's almost like you consider it kind of like a project manager then, like art project manager kind of thing, where you just make sure everyone's on time. And
don't get me started with that. Those are two very different jobs. Too many people confuse those jobs and give them to one person who's not the right person. And, I don't want to get into it. Project manager is, I don't think how can I say this? You don't have to be creative, I think, to be a project manager. You can be. There are creative project managers, but project management is kind of like you said, making sure your deadlines are met, shuffling things from one place to another. Just that's simplification. But I think a project manager can be many people, whereas an art director, you would hope the art director comes from a creative background, whereas a product manager does not necessarily have to come from a creative background. That's kind of my distinction right there. But there are many art director jobs where you're doing both, so you kind of are dipping your hat in. So it's a little confusing, but that's my division right there.
So creative background. So what is how about a quick thumbnail of your background?
Well, my background starts actually with, almost with my introduction to Brian Pulido and, Evil Ernie back in the day. I started at Malibu Comics. My original childhood aspirations were to be a comic book penciler and to, sit at home and draw superheroes in my underwear all day. Big plans. So I got my foot in the door at Malibu Comics, and I was fortunate enough to become a colorist just as Marvel bought them. But while they were still Malibu, they were the first publishers for the Evil Ernie comic books. So, I remember being there, flipping through the black and whites back then and just falling in love with all that, and have been a fan ever since. So that was my kind of introduction into sort of the industry. And then mid-90s, comics kind of took a dump, so to speak. I think video games kind of took over, and Marvel came in and closed the local coloring house. That Malibu Comics was kind of turned into the coloring house for Marvel at one point. And when they came in and said they were closing the doors, I started looking for other gigs where I could use my Photoshop skills, which were my only professional skills at the time. I was still pretty young, like 22, something like that. And somebody alerted me to a place called Applause, which was a toy and gift company. So, I wasn't super interested at first because my vision was still comics and animation. And then when I found out they made Marvel Comics and Star Wars toys, I'm like, oh wait, I can go draw. Like, a little light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, I can design toys. I can draw toys. Like, that's something that might be cool. And so I applied, got that job. Long story short, that's where I came from. And that was, early on, I made my leap from comics to toys, and I never left. That was 97, 98 when I got my job at Applause. And I've been here in this industry, bouncing around from retail toys to collectibles ever since, pretty much.
Wow, that sounds awesome, man.
I've been fortunate. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I was really driven early on. A lot of people ask me, my first gig at Malibu, I think I was 21, maybe. I left college to take that gig. Basically, it was what my dad. I promised my mom, let me try this out. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to college. And I'm well beyond going back to college right now. So it sort of worked out for me. But I did full time at various companies, and then about 2002, I took the leap out on my own and became a freelance artist and designer. And fortunately, I have been doing that ever since. Almost 20 years now on my own, basically.
Wow. All right. So we got some. So Brian didn't just pick some Joe Schmo as an art director. He got the real deal right here. So we got all your. So no wonder that makes sense, and because this statue is gorgeous. Like you say, you were there making sure the art and everyone was following the vision. And so speaking of that, let's take a look. I got some pictures we could pull up. You tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when Brian, Tim, the sculptor, and Brian brought me in just after they got started on this, just as, the extra set of eyes, the guy who's been in the collectibles industry for a while. And I've worked with Tim previously. We did together the first sideshow Lady Death statue. I was fortunate to design that and art direct it. That was one of the cases I got to do both. And with Tim, it was, a pleasure. And it came out beautiful. I might be biased, but it's one of my favorite, up until now, one of my favorite Lady Death statues. Yeah, definitely.
For sure. So this is Tim's sculpture then? Is this, or his?
Correct. Yeah, Tim Miller, amazing dude, a master at his craft. He's a traditional guy, and with this, he started going digital. And, due to some reasons that he chose later on, I think he just felt more comfortable. So you'll see later on, we switched to traditional. But early on here, so this is me. Go back to that previous slide if you can. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a rough, basically Tim's super early posing. He's matching the comic book art right there is what they had. And so the green lines are me basically just making tweaks to the pose. How can we give it some life? How can we, make it a little sexier, that sort of thing. So these are my very first comments to looking at the sculpture, basically. I remember we spent some time on the pose, her walking. Getting somebody believably walking in motion is really tough in a sculpture. It's almost easier to get them running. But to get a walking pose and make it sexy is actually more challenging than you'd think. So we spent some good time playing around with the way her legs should look there. And I don't think they ended up the way I drew them. Tim, of course, improved on every comment, that I make. But it was, changing the arms from just like this to maybe move one elbow forward for a little more depth and variation, giving the hair a little more flow. Just that sort of thing. Basically, my 2 cents of what we could do at this stage is what that is.
All right, let's take a look at this slide here. So it's
this is Tim a little farther along. Still in the digital format. This was probably to show us where the hair was at. As you can see, the hair still looks like noodles, but he's basically getting the main shape in there to make sure that before he goes in and details all the finer hairs that we're happy with how it's draping over her arm and the basic shape and flow of it all.
So how long does, like these digital sculpts, how long does it take folks usually to do it?
Man, that's an impossible question, my friend. It depends on every statue. It could be a few weeks. It could be a few months. Some guys are faster than other guys. And again, if you're doing a dude that has a lot of gear versus, a half naked woman, it's probably going to take different time periods there. But it's a wide range from weeks to months on these things. I know guys have taken, it's crazy, but 6 months on, major sculptures, and that's including back and forth with the client and the licensor. So these things can take quite a bit of time.
Wow. And it's kind of neat that he actually put the toes in there on this one when she's wearing boots. You actually, I guess you have to do it. You got to have everything.
I'm not sure why he did that there, but I think just like, as an illustrator myself, I don't sculpt, but I do design. So it's like, I do know that sculptors in particular, like if you're sculpting, like say spandex or something tight over a body part, you kind of want to sculpt that body part first so that it looks like there's clothing over it rather than just sculpting a piece of clothing, if that makes sense. So they're kind of giving themselves the core of what they want. And then they're going to, just like in real life, the material, the boots or the leather or the spandex is going to go on top of that, that core that he's created, just to give it more realism and, foundation, I think. But again, I'm talking out my butt there because I don't know why those toes are on there. But that's a good reason. It's a good reason why they could be.
So what's it?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, why does this look so real?
The rendering technique, like you can add lighting to it within the program ZBrush to make the sculpture look more like an actual printed 3D object. Like a lot of the images you see in sell-throughs and pre-orders that look like it's an actual sculpture, it's not. It's just it's a digital rendering that's made to look like the final product. Surprise! That's the way a lot of, especially the retail toy companies, because they have to work so fast, they'll use little renderings on their packaging or in the advertisements or whatever. So, so that's what this is. This is just him using. You can choose what material you sculpt with, or what the material is in. So this he just changed to this bronze clay from the gray that was in the previous images.
Alex, so cool.
And this is his next round after those drawovers that I did. You can see the elbow got tweaked a little bit and the hair got tweaked a little bit. This is still super early in the process. Tim's still playing around.
Yeah. And then here's one in the back. That's
Yep. He's playing with the hair. Yeah. I love hair sculpture. I know it's a nightmare, and even drawing it can be a nightmare sometimes. But I love the flow. I just love looking at it. It's almost like I love fabric, like flowing capes or cloth and hair. It all just has like a kind of a, I don't know, a flowing beauty to it in a weird way.
It makes it come to life.
Exactly. It's one of the. With a statue like this, like with her, the only way to really show motion, you've got her hair and you've got the cape. So in these statues that are static, when you have hair and fabric, those are really your ways as a designer and a sculptor to put life into it. Like you just said, it's the part that's moving that looks like it's flowing when the statue is, pretty stuck in its pose, no matter what it's doing. So yeah.
This next one is the base. Anything different about doing the base compared to the?
Everything's different. This is a little more industrial, a little more technical than like a figural. With the base, though, that was my only design input to this, other than art director, was there was no base because this was based on the comic book art. So Brian asked me, of course, to design the base. So early on, while Tim was still working on the sculpture, I did several thumbnail sketches. I wish I had got them prepared, but I did a bunch of sketches, sent them to Brian. Brian, of course, picked the one that he liked best. That was given to Tim. And then this is Tim's, I believe, his first pass at the base that I sketched up. And it actually changed. If you look at the final, it actually went through a couple of versions. But I think this was probably his first pass. Yeah, here, see, this is an early one. We've got like the torches on there that we were going to put on. The base had a little more detail early on. And then we kind of dialed it back to focus more on the figure. And make the base.
I didn't even notice the torches on there. Oh, it's kind of neat.
Yeah. I think those were on my sketch, which is why they were there, and then we booted them.
Oh, neat. Huh. Cool. What could have been. Oh.
Right. Exactly. Oh, man, you'd be surprised. I think there's more stuff that exists in the world of collectibles of what could have been than what is. So many scrapped projects over the years.
All right. So then the next, I have these photos here. And it looks like this is, so who's doing the physical sculpting on this? Is this
yeah, so at this point, I can't speak for Tim, of course, but working on the project, he wanted to nail this like everybody did. And digital was new to Tim at the time. So he just felt more comfortable. And I was like, guys, I'm going to scrap what I did and go traditional. Because, I mean, Tim has done amazing work, in the past traditionally. He's especially females. He does a great female. Which is probably one of the reasons that Brian went to him originally. Tim has done the Adam Hughes sculptures for Sideshow. He's done a lot of very well done, popular female characters. So he just himself as an artist, I think, felt more comfortable putting his hands on it and building it in clay in real life. And he wanted to kick butt because he's a Lady Death fan, and we're all friends. So we supported him, and so this is him, kicking butt. And bringing her along into reality. So this looks like he has gone ahead. He builds it first in like a clay, I believe he started with, and then this is cast and this is a wax, so he can carve finer details into it.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it looks smoother and more. This is more final, but as you can see, it's still in progress. But the base is now more final. It looks more like the what we have in the castings up on the screen there. So this is pretty close to final here. I can tell by her walking. Yeah.
But her hair, you could see that is like a not complete. Correct. And then like the face still getting worked on in there.
Exactly. Those were kind of the last things that he hit was that portrait and the hair. Yeah. Yeah. So this was one of the early. I'm not sure if this was Tim's final portrait, but this was one of the near final images. You can see because he's put the straps on there, which was one of the last things he did, and the belt. Everything's on there now. So this has to be one of the last, probably one of the final images Tim was sending, for approval at this stage.
It's really neat to see it just as that color, and it seems like the belt and all the stuff, like that clothing stuff, really stands out on that. It's really neat to see it that way as well.
Yeah, exactly, because it's all just like the straps. It's all put on separately by Tim. It's not just all carved out of one piece. From what I believe, he made that belt, as you can see on the straps, made the belt separately, and adds on later, so it actually looks like a separate piece.
And then here's also so then that's
the torso, and that's him. So now that everything's approved per me and Brian, he's moving towards what you'd call engineering. And he's basically, if he hadn't sculpted it in this way, then once he sculpts the full body, he'll cut it down and add the keys. So it's for manufacturing and production. So you can mold it in pieces. This isn't moldable all as one statue. It comes out way better the more pieces it is, so you can have more breaks. So he's basically keying it right here. He's making the arms separate, the head separate, the legs. Everything is pulled apart. And there's a square key made so that the factory and the end user, there's no mistake on how to put the piece back in properly so it lines up properly. Because if it's round, you have a lot of people going, I don't know, how does it go? So they usually make them square, and then they'll even be kind of uneven on areas so that it only fits in one way.
Keys. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can just imagine like the first guy who made that mistake, and they're like, no, you put it on.
Right. Exactly. That's the left arm.
And then speaking of the flowing cape, looks like that's an earlier version of the.
Exactly. Yeah, that looks like he's still working in some softer material. I'm not sure there, but yeah, you can see the wire armature that's underneath the cape. He started it with wire and then lays the whatever material he's using over the top of it to make the cape. And Tim does great fabric work too. I love it.
And then, so here are more of those completed ones. Oh, yeah, with the base.
Yeah, that looks pretty final. That's probably his last shots of the wax before he shipped it off for casting.
And then I got some pictures of these close-ups of a face here.
Yeah, that's the old face, I think, right?
It looks like it's not. Yeah, it's not the current.
Go back to the previous photos, the final ones of.
And then see. No, that's not it either. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be. I think this might be okay. So, once we got it approved, Brian and I talked about it, and we saw some areas on the portrait and the hair that we thought should be improved or could be improved. Obviously, we wanted this to kick as much butt as possible. At the time, I believe Tim was busy on one of his million other projects. So in order to keep this rolling, we brought in Sam Greenwell. And he had worked with Brian previously on several Lady Death projects. I don't remember which ones exactly, but he's done Lady Death before. So he was one of the guys Brian knew, and I had known his name from the industry. So we approached him like, hey, can you help us out with this portrait? So we went through several rounds on the portrait, even with Sam, until we got one that we were all happy with. So I think, if memory does not fail me, this is one of the first looks that Sam sent us of a revised portrait.
Wow. I think. Looks amazing.
yeah, it definitely. It's coming along. It looks really good.
Yeah. And then it looks like based off of these, so then I just have the final colored.
Okay, yeah, that must have been. There are probably more photos, but I think we went through maybe 2 or 3 revisions of Sam. We're like, well, could you tweak the eye? Could you do that? Got real nitpicky with the face, I must say. But I think all for the better. She came out pretty awesome. The hair came out great. The hair was a little tricky too, as it's in many pieces. In order to get it to drape over the arms and all key in, it's a little complicated. But all in all, it came out sweet. It came out better. Yeah. Seeing it all come together, you should know how good it's going to look when it's all done. But most of the time, I think you're pleasantly surprised. I saw the paint too. So after the, do we have any photos of the paint process, or is this?
No. Yeah. These are all the ones I had in the.
So after Sam got the portrait and the hair to where we liked it, we sent it off to Jason Wires, and he took the wax sculptures that Tim did and Sam did of the portrait, and he cast those into resin. So we made a mold of those wax sculptures, cast it into resin, and then Jason was the painter as well. So the 3 versions that you see, the blue, red, and white, those were all done by Jason. And those were basically came from me discussing with Brian, hey, we know we're going to do a blue version. What variants are we going to do? And the choices were Brian's, of course. We tossed ideas back and forth, but the clear winners were the Scarlet and the Heaven Sent. So once we decided what the variants were going to be, and Jason had done the main one, we just went in and said, hey, we need the 2 more in these different variations. And then we just, we didn't even make a plan for it. We just kind of flew by the seat of our pants with the bases. We're like, hey, okay, the main base is this. What do we do for the Heaven Sent? And what do we do for the Scarlet? And so we just, I wanted them to each be different. Sometimes variants on statues, they keep the base exactly the same, but we figured why not change the deco on these? Yeah. So basically, with the Heaven Sent, we bleached them. And with the Scarlet, we kind of, stained them. we made the bases darker and lighter, respectively, to kind of match the tone of the overall statue.
And then I love the color on the main one. It's just it's so great how it just
it really pops.
Yeah,
we had talked again. This went through several variations. We had talked about like doing flames behind the skulls or in their eyes, but over time it just got it got more complicated. Yeah, I know, right? Sounds cool. It always sounds cool in theory, but then once you get down to the nitty gritty, it just becomes very complicated and also distracting. It could be from what your main subject is, which is the lady herself. But it was fun to go through the process of figuring out what we did and didn't want.
And then, so if you wanted to add all that stuff, I assume all that stuff costs more money and more production time for them to when they manufacture it. So if you 100%. Did all the extra little,
it would cost more money for Tim to sculpt it, for Jason to paint it, for China to produce it, for China to paint it. It would every step of the way, whatever you do would cost more money, and especially if it's little pieces. Like if we were going to do flames in the eyes, you'd have to like paint each tiny flame, stick it in each eye. It's a lot of labor for some tiny little piece, and that would have just meant more cost to the collector. So we focused on what was important and threw away. That's kind of how it is at the beginning of a project. You kind of throw in the whole kitchen sink, and then as you roll along, you're like, we don't need this, we don't need that. We can you kind of narrow your focus to what your subject is and what's important in the piece. basically.
Yeah, wow, you guys, so fun. What was the total? So when you got involved, how long did it take to get from that beginning sculpt to now? Like for
Wow, I wish I could answer that. Months, actually, longer than a normal project, just because we were all doing different things. You know, I think Tim had multiple projects. I was doing different stuff. Brian was busy with, of course, his stuff. Yeah. And I don't think at the beginning, Brian set like a super tight deadline. He kind of just didn't want to rush Tim, didn't want to rush the process. So I think he just kind of let it go. So, you know, I months, but when you condense it down, I mean, you know, gosh, I want to say 8 months maybe, but you condense it down, it would probably would have been 3, you know, from all the time in between that we weren't working on it and whatnot. But it took quite a while, but it's just because everybody took their time and put a lot of love into it. And it was nice to not have to rush to the usual, you know, death-defying deadlines that the industry often likes to toss at you for no reason that you can understand. Yeah, I was just talking to people online about it, and I understand retail clients, like they have seasonal windows they've got to meet, but most of the collectible companies, they sell direct to the consumer. They don't have the tight schedule. So it's like, why is this a rush? Like, slow down, do it right. But everybody wants their stuff yesterday, so I'm just grateful to get work and just do it as fast as I can.
Yeah. Well, the more you do, the more work you get. So what is this photo here? This is when you were in, we announced it back in, is that New York?
Yeah, I know that's San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah, gosh, that was 2 years ago, I think, when we first announced it.
That was 2 years. Wow, time flies.
I know, right? It does, really. You know, it got put on hold for several reasons. You know, mostly because Brian wanted to do it right, make sure we got it manufactured right, and he has a lot of stuff going on. And it was a good thing we waited, because I think it's now's a good time for it, and we've got a great factory lined up that's gonna, you know, kick butt and really do us and the fans proud. So yeah, this was when we first announced it. This was 2018, I guess. 19? Was it 18?
Yeah, probably 18, I guess. And
back with the pandemic and everything, I think everybody skipped a year. So
yeah, just like a fake year. It looks like the base. Looks like the base was the same. So it wasn't for the Heaven Sent. That wasn't updated yet. Looks like
exactly. It may have.
Interesting.
You know what? Again, since it was 2 years ago, my memory is a little foggy. But it was either because to meet the deadline for Comic-Con.
Oh, okay.
No, that doesn't make sense, because why would it be? So I think the correct thinking is we decided after he had painted the prototypes for Comic-Con that we wanted to do the change in the colors.
Oh,
you know,
cool.
It was like we were up against the deadline just to get it to show to Comic-Con. So I think in the, you know, for the sake of time, we just told Jason, hey, just do all the bases the same, and we'll worry about the variations when we go to send the paint masters to the factory.
So, it looked really cool in those boxes too. That's going to look great on people's display case or just on the shelf when they put them in that kind of case.
Yeah, definitely. Some people put them in the display cases. It probably makes sense because they collect a whole lot of dust. Yeah. My statues, when they're displayed, it's ridiculous, and they're impossible to dust too because they're, you know, fragile and whatnot. But cases are a good choice for sure.
All right, folks, if you have any questions for the super talented art director Joe Allard, the mighty Joe. Let's see, got anything here? Robert, looks awesome. Just can't afford it yet. Yep, get that. Hear you there.
Yep. I can't afford half the stuff that I work on. Probably more than half the stuff I work on. It's crazy.
Let's see. Let's see. From Yvonne, I like the blue tone from the classic. Yes.
Nice.
Also, the skulls are killer on classic. Yeah, definitely love the skulls.
Skulls, can't go wrong with skulls, especially when you're dealing with coffin comics and collectibles. kind of go hand in hand, I think.
Like Adam Hughes told Brian, is like, man, you're skull crazy.
That's okay. I think there's worse things to be crazy about.
You've also said, I noticed the skin tone is slightly different between each statue, or is that my imagination?
You know, I don't think it's your imagination, but it's also not intended. It's because they're all painted by hand, you know, and they were painted at different times, probably. You know, I think Jason did the classic, and then later on we had him paint the variants. So he's mixing paints right there, you know. So there's going to be some slight variation. It could also be your monitor, because I'm staring at them here, and they don't look really different, but they're not intended to be. She's, you know, her skin tone is going to stay the same. I think we may have put some variation in the hair, but I can't remember. It's been so long. I think in some areas we added a little more purple than we did. And I think in the Heaven Sent, we did a little less, or a little more of the kind of bluish. Yeah, you know, I'm having a hard time remembering.
So
my words.
So I know one of them went to the manufacturer. So are you gonna be part of this process too? Like,
yeah,
give it the okay and make sure everything is.
Yes. Brian has thankfully asked me to continue my art director duties, and now that it's transferring from basically the creatives over to the factory, it's when you really kind of have to step up your eyeballs and your observation, because now the factory is taking over. You don't get to communicate with them as often. You know, I could text back and forth, talk to Tim all day long, talk to Brian. The factory, you can talk to them, but they're busy. They're doing stuff. So, you know, you only get updates, and things take weeks. So now you're entrusting your baby, basically, you know, this thing that we slaved over for months, and we're giving it to the factory. Fortunately, we have a great factory, one that has done, you know, thousands of high quality sought after collectibles. You know, they're a main collectibles factory. So we're in good hands, but still, you know, they're now taking your prototypes, and they have to create a mold from your prototypes to make the, you know, the multiples that we're selling right now. So there's always a chance that something can happen from your prototype to their prototype that does not jive up. You know, so first we're going to get, once we send them a tool master and a paint master. So they get an unpainted version, which is just for them to take, and they make that's where they make the mold from. So they're going to take our statue, they're going to make silicone mold from it, and that's what they're going to make the multiples from. So when they do that, when they do the pour, there are things that can go wrong. They're experts, but there's still things. Maybe it didn't fill a certain crack right, or maybe a chunk of hair broke off while it was in the mold that they don't know, you know. So it's up to us to see that stuff and to really compare it with what our ideal version is, which is the statues that everybody's been seeing right now. Those are the prototypes, and those are our ideal version of what it should be. So it's just kind of watching every stage of the manufacturing to make sure, yep, that looks right. Yep, that looks right. Did they match these colors right? Did they match the way Jason did the soft airbrushing on her cheeks and on her limbs? You know, that's the tricky stuff, because you're relying on, you know, the tooling is one thing, but then the painting, you're relying on other artists to interpret what Jason has done, you know, and what we all approved. So it's kind of a tricky stage, and the painting is often where there's a lot of back and forth of, you know, this color doesn't look quite right, or the airbrush is too heavy, you know, stuff like that, just to fine tune it so that it looks like what we want it to.
And the painting, that's actually done by artists, right? It's not just.
Oh yeah, like that's what I mean. 100%. Nope. Okay. Nope. It's another. Yeah, right. That'd be cool. Send it to the painting robot. Number 5, please paint this in the Majestic colors. No, someday, man, someday it's going to be that way, I'm sure. They're already 3D printing in color, so I don't think that sort of thing is far off. Yeah, it's crazy. But no, right now, these will come to a painter in the factory, unpainted, and they will physically, with an airbrush and with a paintbrush, recreate what Jason has done, also with a paintbrush and with an airbrush and all that. So it's all by hand. That's why, you know, that's one of the selling points. That's why when you see these statues, they say hand painted. You're like, oh, it's not done by a machine. It's done by a human. It's a craft. It's a work of art, each one technically. But that is why there's so much variation, and that's why you bring in an art director to oversee it and make sure that every guy is painting it as similarly as possible, so they all look the same, basically.
Yeah. So you truly are directing art and directing all these artists. So that.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what's happening.
So I have to ask this because a lot of people are pointing this out. So up there with the hands, with the sleeves connect, there's a gap.
Yes.
And I know about that gap because me and Julian have put these together, taken them apart, but the final thing, the final statue will not have that gap. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. Thank you for bringing that up, whoever brought that up. Yeah, that's something I kept telling Brian to emphasize also. Yes, seeing as this is a prototype and it was all hand done, it was hand sculpted by Tim and hand cast by Jason. It is not perfectly machined as well as the manufactured statue will be. Those keys are going to be perfectly matched in the molding process and the manufacturing process so that it all fits together perfectly. And not only that, is there will be most likely magnets in several of them that will hold the pieces together tight. I can't confirm that, but most of the statues have magnets, at least in a few spots, that hold the keys in there tightly so that they don't fall out. But 100%, there's also some gaps in the hair. If you look on the backside on the prototype, none of that will be there. That's all going to fit nice and tight, just like a puzzle, like it should. When you get your final piece, it'll be clean as a whistle. Yeah.
Now we know when we take those promo videos and photos, we should use that. Go back to that original 3D sculpt thing to make it look like it's.
Oh, right. Exactly. That's another reason they do it, because they don't have to worry about all of any painting errors or casting errors or anything like that.
Yeah, but we have a lot of keen collectors out there who have eagle eyes that notice that right away, and they're like, "I hope you fix that." And like,
yeah, 100%. And that's also why, if you look on images from Sideshow, Diamond, whoever, there are often little gaps, and that's also why it'll always say prototype at the bottom, because it's still in progress, it's not manufactured, and it's going to get improved, basically. But yeah, 100% all those keys will fit properly once it's manufactured.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's great to get an authoritative voice to the art director to officially say it. It's
right.
Official. It's not just some guy on the internet trying to tell you, listen to me, right. It's correct.
Hey, it'll be perfect. No problem. Good as new.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah, everyone's asking what's next.
Oh man, I want to know what's next. That's a question for Brian. That's what that's what all our hopes were for, was kind of writing on this Kickstarter. Was we hope there's an appetite for it. We hope people want Lady Death product right from the source, like they get their comic books. And so far it looks like they do want that. So I'm hoping this opens up doors for Brian and myself, hopefully, to do more stuff. I even told Brian I have a lot of ideas floating around in my head now that we see that there is a bit of an appetite. Certain piece types I want to pitch to Brian. Hey, what about doing this? What about doing that? I'm sure Brian has a million ideas of his own, as he always does. So I'm curious to hear, but I'm as excited to find out what's next as the collectors are, I think, because it's always fun. I'm super fortunate to have the job that I do, and when I get to work on stuff that I love, like Lady Death, with kick-ass people like Brian and everybody, then it's just doubly awesome.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for taking us through that whole process. It's so great, and explaining what you do and all that. So really appreciate that. It really puts perspective on the statue. You just see it there, but you don't get to see. I don't know, personally, I love to see it from the beginning to end, just the whole process and everything that goes into it, because truly it is art. It's not just Lady Death product. It is it's truly a work of art that that people, when they invest their money in that's like $300, whatever, it's just like, yeah, they're really putting a work of art on their shelf in their room. So
exactly, yeah, I'm glad that you realize that. And that is not, as I think you've learned, and everybody has from the discussion, you're getting something from many different artists. A lot of artists put their heart and soul into this and your other collectibles that you're getting, and the Coffin Comics and all that. So, you're supporting those artists to do what they love to do, and they love what they make, and I think it shows in that product. So it's kind of just this cyclical thing that keeps everybody going around, and either doing or collecting what they love. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Definitely.
Yeah. And the success of this Kickstarter, it really helps Coffin Collectibles, now the sister company of Coffin Comics. You know, Brian's been talking about this in the background forever, so this is a good sign. People are backing it. People do have that appetite. So,
Right.
yeah, I can't wait to see what Brian does. Like when it's, you know, Brian goes to 11 all the time. So
Exactly.
super exciting to see what's going to happen next. Okay, we're almost out of time here. Let's see, anyone else? Let's see, when is this over? So the Kickstarter, 8 days, and I just added it in the link as it comes across. So it's going to end Friday, July 2nd at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So if you can get that in, your credit card won't get billed until that very end moment, and that's when they capture the money. But so you can just pledge right now if you want to grab one of these limited statues, because
do it now.
I believe this is limited to 300 on that one, and both of them, these two, the Scarlet and the Heaven Sent. So if you want to grab a limited edition one, now's the time to do it.
It's hard to pick a favorite of those. They're all awesome. Even I don't know what my favorite is right there.
Yeah. Okay, if you had to choose, originally I thought it was going to be the Heaven Sent. I was always in love with the Heaven Sent, but now I think it's just the standard one is the one I love the most. It's just like the red, white, and blue, and the skulls on the base. It's so hard. I go back and forth. It's just, I don't know. But then the red on here, just like the candy apple red of her outfit, it's just.
Yep. That would be my choice. I have a hard time picking as well, and I love like the classic, the bright red of the cape just makes her pop, and just the fact that this is something that Jason did too. That we worked. The back of the cape is a matte finish, whereas her outfit is very shiny and latex, and that just comes through, and the contrast and the finishes is just awesome. But that said, it's the Scarlet that catches my eye a little bit more every time. It's just like you said, that candy apple red outfit and the darker base and the black behind her in her cape, that just, I think that one just pops. If I had to pick, if I was stuck on a desert island and could only have one of these Lady Death statues, I think I'd choose the Scarlet.
The Sophie's choice of statues, right? Let's see. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So, folks, if you haven't checked it out already, check it out right now on Kickstarter. The Lady Death Majestic Statue Series going on in Kickstarter. Go check it out today. I think you're going to be very impressed of all the extra value we added with the extra comics, metallic cards, the prints. So many goodies. You're getting a super value for your buck on this. Brian doesn't pull any punches. We know we work for you guys. You are Coffin Comics. So thanks, everyone, for your support so far, and please consider us in the future. Any last words you want to say, Joe, before we head off?
No, I just want to thank the fans for being awesome. I mean, it's because there are so many awesome sworn fans that we get to do this fun stuff. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Brian and everything he does, and to be able to work on this stuff is just so awesome. And it all depends on you guys loving it. So thank you for supporting the Kickstarter. Thank you for checking out what we're doing. Thank you for watching. And go Lady Death.
Sworn.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this with the Kickstarter video here at the end. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.
Later.
Let's see. Back in.
Greetings, everybody. This is Brian Polito, publisher of Coffin Comics and creator of Lady Death. I'm here to introduce Coffin Collectibles, an all-new enterprise, and I'm very proud of our first offering, the Lady Death Majestic Statue Series. The Lady Death Majestic Statue Series is based on the artwork of Richard Ortiz and is available in 3 distinct editions. The Classic Edition, with Lady Death adorned in her classic costume colors. The Limited Scarlet Edition, featuring Lady Death's fiery dark side. And the Limited Heaven Sent Edition, emphasizing Lady Death's rarely displayed, softer, angelic nature. The statues are cold cast in resin, 1/6 scale, individually hand-painted, and stand a mighty 15 inches tall, including base. Once complete, they will ship in a sturdy box featuring custom box art. Now, let's take a minute and luxuriate in the love and detail invested in each edition of the Lady Death Majestic Statue Series. the Lady Death Majestic Statue Series to life, Coffin Collectibles has assembled a team of supremely talented veteran artisans at the very pinnacle of their craft, including Joe Allard, Art Director, Tim Miller and Sam Greenwell, Sculptors, Jason Wires, Prototype Painting and 3D Printer, and based on the art of Richard Ortiz. As you can see, the Lady Death Majestic Statue Series prototypes are done. And even now we've begun the molding process, but I need your help to bring these statues to life. Please pledge now and tell everyone you know. We cannot thank you enough for your support and faith in us. Coffin Collectibles is an entirely new enterprise. We're excited to unveil new and exciting things for years to come. Thank you so much, everybody. You rock!